Wanted to talk about a duality also that I see coming forward in politics. The Trump v. Biden battle, to the extent that it ends up happening. Earlier this morning, the D.C. Court of Appeals essentially rejected a portion of, or rejected the Jan 6th argument that Trump's activities were privileged and part of his presidential powers. And by the way, I am synthesizing what their opinion was. It's like a 58-page judicial opinion. I'm just trying to give you the bullet points of what exactly was ruled. So they said Trump cannot avoid criminal prosecution here by arguing that all of his actions were within the scope of his presidential powers. That's essentially what they said. And now Trump has an option to appeal to what they call en banc, the entire D.C. Court of Appeals. And if he does that, probably still going to get shot down, but he could wait 30 days. It could hold up things for 60 days or whatever, and then he could go to the Supreme Court. But if he does that, then the court is saying they will allow the district court to continue the process of beginning the trial. I think what Trump's going to do instead by Monday is appeal directly to the Supreme Court. And what I have been telling you for some time is I expect that there's no way Trump can go on trial, regardless of what the Supreme Court rules, until we get those rulings that will probably come down in late June. That means to me the earliest that Trump could go on trial in D.C., which was originally scheduled for March 4th, and I've been telling you that date was out the window, the earliest that Trump could go on trial is probably late July, early August. That's my expectation. It would then be a couple of months, the trial, and so it would run through the end of July, August, into September, maybe into October. So people would have already started voting potentially before the Jack Smith case actually comes down. And this would be a flagrant violation of Department of Justice precedent, which says, generally speaking, that they do not engage in political prosecutions during election season. So Merrick Garland, Joe Biden, Department of Justice, they're trying to put Donald Trump, the chief political adversary of Joe Biden, in prison for the rest of his life while people are going out to make a decision on who the president of the United States should be. My position on this is pretty clear. Everybody knows what happened by now on January 6th. We've had the hearings in Capitol Hill. We've seen all the reporting. We've seen the videos. There is no uncertainty about January 6th. What this really boils down to is this question. Do you want a 12-person jury out there in Washington, D.C., which is 95% Democrats? Do you want a 12-person jury to make a decision on whether Donald Trump's actions on January 6th should disqualify him from being president? Or do you want 150 million potential voters nationwide to be a jury weighing in on whether you think Donald Trump's actions were disqualifying? To me, if you actually believe in democracy, this is not a hard decision. You want 150 million people weighing in all over the country in all 50 states on whether they think Donald Trump is qualified to be president of the United States or whether they like Joe Biden or some other Democrat to be named later. That's actual democracy. Trying to take the guy off the ballot, as they're doing in Maine and Colorado, and trying to put him in prison for the rest of his life, as they are trying to do in New York, in D.C., in Georgia, and in Florida, is actually the threat to democracy. It's amazing to me that the argument is we have to put the chief political opponent of the current sitting president of the United States in prison for the rest of his life rather than allow people to decide whether they like him or Joe Biden or someone Democrat to be named later. That's the question. Do you want a jury of 12 people to decide what they think about January 6th? Or in November, 9 months from now, do you want everybody in the entire country who is a citizen and a voter to be able to go out and render their own verdict based on what we have all seen that has already been reported and discussed in infinite detail relating to Jan 6th. And this doesn't even consider, by the way, that the Supreme Court is already sitting and making a decision on obstruction to potentially toss 2 of the 4 charges that Jack Smith is attempting to bring against Donald Trump. Again, I don't see any way that this trial can start until late July at the earliest, maybe potentially early August. And do we really want that time frame for Trump to have to appear every day in trial in Washington, D.C., sitting in front of a jury and a judge, rather than be able to actually have a campaign and be traveling all over the country trying to make his case to America? Finally, that is the Democrat plan. It is to throw as much lawfare at Trump as they possibly can, and they hope in the process persuade Americans that Trump is unelectable because, and by Americans, I mean non-Democrats, non-Republicans, just people out there who are persuadable that they should stick with Biden or a Democrat to be named later. Meanwhile, that is the Democrat plan, lawfare. Working against it is the fact that I believe Biden has clear issues of mental and physical cognition and health.
People have pled guilty. You know, right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. And it was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, "America's back." And Mitterrand from France looked at me and said, "You know, why? How long are you back for?" And I looked at him, and the Chancellor of Germany said, "What would you say, Mr. President, if you picked up the paper tomorrow in the London Times, and the London Times said, 1,000 people break through the House of Commons, break down the doors, 2 bobbies are killed in order to stop the election of the Prime Minister." What would you say? I never thought about it from that perspective. What would we say if that happened in another democracy around the world?
Joe Biden said he went to the G7 summit recently, and he said he showed up and he was talking to the other leaders, G7, of course, the global biggest countries in the world, biggest economies, and they regularly meet to talk about issues of international, economic, and beyond concerns. And he said, "I was talking with the president of Germany, Mitterrand." And then he said, he tried to correct himself, and he said, "Oh, I mean the president of France, Mitterrand." The problem with that is the president of France, as many of you out there know, because he's been the president of France for like the last 6 years, is Emmanuel Macron. And Emmanuel Macron is the president of France. Joe Biden was actually making up a conversation that he supposedly had with Francois Mitterrand, who was the president of France until 1995 and actually died in 1996. This guy has got major cognition-related issues. And this is not, to me, getting someone's name mixed up, right? It's easy sometimes. I do it. You probably do it, where you just get a name mixed up. The guy's been dead 28 years. He died in 1996. This happened with Biden when he was in Congress, in the White House, and he tried to give a shout out to a Indiana congresswoman first name Jackie. I apologize, I don't remember her last name, but she died in a car accident, and the White House had put out condolences. She was dead. He said, "Where's Jackie? Jackie, where are you?" Jackie's unfortunately dead, Joe Biden. And this just happened again in North Carolina, where Biden tried to shout out a congresswoman when he was appearing in North Carolina and said he had just gotten his picture taken with her, and that didn't happen, and she wasn't actually there. This is not like one or two little things that is happening. 82-year-old Joe Biden, as 75% of Americans believe, does not have the mental or physical capacity to be the president of the United States. And the more frequently this keeps happening as an issue, I think the more and more likely it becomes that Biden is not going to be the nominee at all. But if he is, a lot of independent voters are going to have to make a decision. Are they more troubled by the lawfare against Trump and the potential that he could be convicted of a felony in a Democrat-run city by a Democrat-run jury? Or are they more troubled by the mental and physical deterioration of Joe Biden and the fact that what I believe is true, he's not actually capable of being president of the United States right now? That's going to be the question. We'll continue to break that down for you.